Richard Chase, who has been called the Vampire of Ascarmanto, has been the deadliest since his youth. He lived his life under a series of powerful delusions that had disastrous consequences. Richard Chase became famous, killing and mutilating the bodies of victims in California in the late 70s. Given his nickname, of course you will not be surprised when we tell you that he drank the blood of his victims after killing them. But believe it or not, the blood of his victims was not the most disturbing thing about this criminal. Vampire. Guess what more this killer could do than drink the blood of his victims? Let's see together the story of the Sacramento Vampire. Richard Chase showed signs of mental illness at an early age. But his father, who was strict and sometimes physically abusive, did little to help him. He was restless and unhappy. The symptoms of his illness worsened, and in his teens he lit several small fires. He often wet his bed and showed signs of cruelty towards animals. These habits are sometimes called the Trinity of Social Moderation, which was proposed by the doctor in 1963 as predictive signs of the disease of social moderation. Chase's problems increased when his father kicked him out of the house. So he turned to drinking alcohol and drugs, and soon those drugs aggravated his illness. Sometimes he thought that his heart had stopped, and that he was a corpse walking on the ground. One of his strangest and most powerful delusions concerned his skull. He felt the bones of his skull separate and begin to move under the skin. He even shaved his head to monitor the movements of those bones. And at the age of 25, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He was placed in a correctional institution in 1975 to prevent him from harming himself. He gained the nickname Dracula among the psychiatric hospital assistants who saw him kill and try to drink the blood of several birds. In an attempt to stave off the poison that he imagined was slowly running through his body. There were attempts to inject himself with the blood of birds, which made him violently ill, which eventually got him into those correctional institutions. Although many similar incidents occurred, the staff thought they had rehabilitated him, and he was released to live with his mother. It was a very wrong decision, as Chase's condition wasn't getting better, it was getting worse, after which he started to develop his strange killer habits. Although Richard Chase was released into the care of his mother, there was nothing legally binding to force him to remain with her. Shortly after he was discharged from the hospital, he moved to an apartment where he lived with a group of young men whom he called his friends. But it seemed that they did not know him very well. And when his unusual behavior came to him, like his drug use and walking around the apartment without clothes, they asked him to leave the apartment and look for another place. He went back to living alone again, which exacerbated the symptoms of his condition. Except for his fascination with blood to emerge, he started catching small animals and killing them. He would eat it raw or mix its parts with soda and drink the mixture. Really disgusting thing. In late August 1977, the Tonveda police found him covered in blood, carrying a bucket of livers in his pickup truck, and since they found the blood and the organ belonged to a cow, and not a human, they let him go, and he was alone with no one to watch him, or take care of his terrible things. He fell even deeper under the power of his delusions, until finally pushed him to do what he had not imagined. On December 29, 1977, Richard became frustrated and lonely. His mother wouldn't let him come home for Christmas, which made him angry. Then Chase searched for his first victim. It was a 51-year-old man named Employs Griffin, who was helping his wife get groceries while they were driving down their street. Chase pulled out a .22 caliber revolver and shot him in the chest. On January 23, 1978, Chase entered the home of Teresa Weil, who was pregnant, through her front door. He would say during his interrogation later that he felt the door was left open. It is only an invitation for him to enter. From that moment on, all his victims were people who left the doors of their homes open. Chase shot Teresa Weil. 3 bullets from the same gun he used to kill his victims each time, and stabbed them with a knife before cutting off their organs and drinking their blood. His last murders were the most heinous of all. And on January 1978 of the month, only 4 days after he killed Llewellyn, Chase held Papa Evelyn Miros open. Inside were her 2-year-old son, Jason Miros, and 22-month-old nephew, David Ferreira. And a friend named Dan Merritt shot Milods in the hallway, killing him with a gunshot to the head. And then he stole his car keys, after which Chase committed atrocities against children that need not be mentioned to preserve the feelings of those who watch the video. But it's atrocities that no one can imagine. News spread about what happened that night, and one of the neighbors noticed that he saw Altai stealing a Mercedes car and running away with it. He informed the police, and the police were able to identify Tasharif through his fingerprints at the crime scene. When the police searched Chase's house, they found that all of his tools were stained with blood, and that his refrigerator contains human brains, and Sheik was arrested. The bloodthirsty trial began on the 2nd of January, 1979, and it lasted for 5 months. His defense lawyers refused the proposed death penalty on the grounds that Sharif was not guilty by reason of insanity, but in the end, after 5 hours of deliberations, the jury sided with the prosecution. Richard Gaze, the murderer and vampire, who was convicted of 6 murders and sentenced to death in the gas chamber. His fellow prisoners, who were aware of what he had done, were very afraid of him. Some even encouraged him to kill himself. And that's exactly what Richard Chase did. Where he stocked up on anti-anxiety and antidepressant medication given to him by prison staff. Until he had enough for an overdose, he was found dead in his cell the day after his birthday in the year 1980. From a personal point of view, everyone who neglected and left this person free should be prosecuted. The sanitarium officials should be prosecuted for letting him out thinking they rehabilitated him, and the policeman who found him covered in blood and let him go should be prosecuted before they first reviewed his records and made sure he wasn't mentally ill. Tell us your point of view in the comments, and let us know who you think you are too. My friends, don't forget to like and subscribe to encourage us to publish more of this content. These are other videos you may like.